Nikita, hello and welcome to the first episode of the podcast that we haven't decided on the name of.
The podcast we don't have a name for. Does the name matter? Do you think people choose things because of the name or because of the content?
People find things because of the name, but can't come for the name, stay for the content. Doesn't matter. The name will be there by the time this episode comes out.
It better.
Okay. Okay, we can just go with our initial topic, but
I have a topic.
it's good.
I just came back from circling. I don't know if I told you about circling before, or I have told you about circling enough.
Quick definition.
At quick definition, they describe it as a social meditation. They describe it as something where people sit in a circle and relate to each other in the present moment. So the meditation object is the relationship between people, and it's very different from like normal way of relating, because if you try to start explaining things or you try to get into, this week was very difficult for me and I had a fight with my mom, yada yada. Nobody really cares, and I can just intersect and say that I don't care, or in a nice way. That is completely acceptable. So it's a very interesting practice that claims to have no rules, and I find it very interesting, and I've been doing it for some time now. And sometimes go ahead.
Let me say it back to you. So it's basically a gathering of people who come there for some kind of mental relief, collective meditation. There are no rules, no hard rules at least, right? And people sit in the meditation, and there's a timer, like you have like an hour.
Yeah, there is a facilitator, and there is a timer. It usually goes for an hour, sometimes 2 hours. Someone described it as a intimacy without friendship, because after a circling session, you typically feel quite connected to some people or most of the people in the room.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, it's just, I'm not too far from those kind of events at least in principle, like the idea of them is familiar to me, but it takes me some time to understand what circling is. But sounds good. Yes. Okay. So what happened today?
And to be honest, I've been struggling a lot with trying to explain what circling is, because one has to try it, and any explanation I've ever given was not very close to what it actually is. The thing that happened to me when I was in LA, imagine like the LA crowd with a lot of spiritual people, all of these like very ecstatic dance / Burning Man types of people. And we were doing circling, and I knew most of them. And it happened about 6 months ago. And there is this person who is, let's say, like from Arabic origins. What do you call them? Middle Eastern, right? Definitely Middle Eastern. And he came to the circle for the first time, and he came in and he sat down. It was very quiet and very attentive, and he was like paying attention and being all, very, he looked like very, very inspiring, and
involved and connected.
But you can't tell because he was silent the entire time. And in circling, when someone is being silent and like very attentive for too long, it's not uncommon for people to wonder what's happening with this person. So they say, hey, like, what's going on with you? Can you share your experience? How are you relating to us? How are you relating to circle? It's your first time. Like, what are you feeling? So this is completely normal for the newcomers. And he responded in a way that I still remember, and I still struggle to find a way to relate to it. The thing that he did, he said, in a very condescending and kind of like storytelling, slow, in my opinion, like very unpleasant way, he goes, I've been traveling a lot and I've seen many things, and let me tell you something. I think that it is because of soft and weak men like you, this country is going to hell. Full stop. Now imagine this type of bomb being dropped in the middle of soft and weak man, in a circle of those people who talk about emotions for hours.
Let me ask you, he was addressing not one specific you. He was looking around, yes, at all the men.
Yeah, he wasn't talking to, not to me, but specifically like to the entire group of people, or to the entire culture, I would say. I think he was actually referring to the American culture in general. And the reason I'm talking about this is because what I've been trying to write in my blog for a while, it seems that in the way we relate to people, there are two fundamental ways. You can say, I agree with someone, or you can say, I disagree with someone, right? You can say, yes, that is right, I agree. These fucking Americans are going to destroy it, blah, blah, blah. They need to be stronger. This is how you do it. Like a typical, let's call him like a conservative or a Republican maybe. And I'm using these terms loosely because it's not about politics. Or you can disagree. You can say, you know what? This goes against my values. This goes against everything that I believe in. And in fact, you are the reason this country goes to hell. Specifically, your kind is why we're having problems that we're having in the world. Except that I don't know if it's ever talked about it, and I remember that you sometimes share this value too. The idea of agreeing or disagreeing, the idea of taking side, often feels very limiting, right? Taking a side is like you have to box yourself to one side or the other. And the value that I was trying to uphold when I was in that circle, I was trying to say, how do I choose a side that neither agreeing nor disagreeing? And I'm going to stop here because I'm talking for a while, but I wonder how you relate to this opening
No,
to the story.
yeah, this is good because everyone loves a polarizing statement or some kind of drama that unfolds based on polarization, right? And this guy just took a hard line, like side. Okay, well, you're the silly liberals who rot the fabric of this amazing country that I came to enjoy, and now from his point of view, he was realizing maybe that the masculinity that he thought was perhaps too much, or maybe it was just right, that he brought from his homeland is missing, and he misses it. Like the question is, of course, like why the hell are you here? Of course, there's many aspects of where he came from that are probably worse in his mind. That's why. But I think people, it's just easier on the brain to make a hard line, to take a hard line's position, to either be with the left or with the right, with the top or with the bottom. And it's like in this heated political climate that has been nonstop ever since Trump got elected in the US, maybe even earlier, but especially felt then. It's almost like people are very uncomfortable with not knowing what your position is as a person who communicates with them. They kind of want to place you somewhere. I mean, we all do to a certain extent, but I really appreciate people who are not easily placed and have plasticity in their thinking, because I think I am like that. But even people on the spectrum still kind of want to find where they relate to people they communicate with, and if I think it's a matter of trust, preserving feelings and emotions, in the acceptable state, because all these challenges it can be very painful for people, especially with ideas that are already solidified, and especially when there's a community that supports the same ideas, and then if anybody just tries to disrupt it, it's like a burglar entering your home, or somebody's setting your house on fire. Like, how dare you? I've been building this for years, and so. But today you went to circling, and nothing like this happened. You just remembered about that episode that happened 6 months ago or so, because that was also at circling.
There was a person who I actually have a lot of respect for, and he said that he has a lot of respect for people who engage in his heated discussions. He loves to antagonize people, and he loves to draw them out and their opinions out, and he holds the value that these types of discussions are necessary to bring out what he calls it like the ultimate truth. So he says, I want to know what you think about what I think, and I want you to defend your values in front of me as I'm defending mine, and I'm open to discovering greater values together and upholding these values. And this isn't really much different from the character that I described before. Ultimately, someone makes a very strong statement, very strong line, and then holds dear life for this line, and somehow it goes against the grain for me. And the struggle I'm having is, and the question that is still open, okay, these people exist. In fact, these people exist everywhere you can look. These people exist in politics, these people exist in your neighborhood and your community, and they have these strong opinions. My mom has a strong opinion, So I have two options, right? It seems like there are two options. You can agree or disagree, and maybe the third option is you can ignore, right? You can be like, I'm not getting into this. Are these the only options? Because it seems like if these are the only options, then the direction we are heading is further polarization.
Yeah, and it can get worse.
Which is already a problem. And I can't explain how important it is to me. Yeah. So like the question I have is, what the hell do you do with this? Like, if you were in that circle, as I was, like, what would you do? Or I guess, what do you do with people who have strong opinions about things. Someone comes and say, hey, look, for you, I think that you need to do blank, blank, and blank because this is how things are
Yeah, I
done,
think
and you not
there's a
doing it is
way.
bad.
Let's talk through it and see if it's the fourth way. To be a chameleon and to adjust, to send just enough signals out to fit the current situation without conflict or with minimal conflict. And so that means that if you step inside a mosque, a Muslim holy place, you need to take your shoes off, you need to abide by their rules, but you really came in to say hello to your friend or to, see the beautiful mosaics on the walls and stuff like that. You didn't come there to pray or convert. Right? So, and you have to respect them in that moment. As soon as you get out of there, you can say like, oh, that's too much for me. I could never do that. And also go do things that are completely sinful. But while you're there, you cannot do that. And you probably enjoy that moment of accepting, of compliance to their rules, because that allows you to connect temporarily with them. And it's like it's not taking their side, and it's not being against them, and it's not ignoring it. It's like adopting it for the moment, for a moment. What else it can be? It can be a social gathering. It's a very interesting social gathering. It's a meetup networking event. You don't like 80% of the people there, but you like the snacks. You like the decorations of the co-working space. You like the wine, and there's one friend that you haven't seen in a year in that space. So everything kind of becomes irrelevant that you don't like about that space for some time because you adopted it, because there's something to gain from being a chameleon in that environment. Some people will ask you questions that ordinarily would annoy you, but you'll roll with them because you're in a space temporarily. You can handle it. So this is what I'm thinking. Like, what could be the other way? And because if you take a hardline position, if you stay polarizing, I mean, you'll just be, shitting all over the place and destroying things, or having a love fest situation only, and kind of completely avoid anything that doesn't fit. And it's the kind of situation where you just at a family gathering, when somebody says something about another race that is offensive, and you have no problem. You have a friend of that race. You just stand up and leave, and they say, "Why? Where are you going?" Like, I don't have to explain. I don't feel comfortable. That's kind of another hardline position. But sometimes you have to be there, right? Sometimes you have to get there because everyone has limits. So yeah, does it make sense?
Yeah. So what you're describing is if you're a guest in a culture, whatever the culture might be, it is your choice to be there. And because it is your choice to be there, it makes sense to be respectful to whatever the culture is, right? You wouldn't come to a... yeah, I'm not going to give examples, but you know what I mean. You're not going to do weird things at strange places where these things can get really...
Or be punished.
Get people angry. And I'm not really talking about... Right, and I'm not even talking about being disrespectful either. But I understand this. However, what I mean is, imagine that you're with someone who is... You're not in the position of a guest. You're in a position of an equal in some ways, a peer. Same, whatever, race, gender, age. And this person exhibits an opinion or tells you an opinion that you just throws you off. Someone comes in and says, look, I don't know. The thing is, I don't want to bring in any specifics because they alone can tell too much about me. But essentially, anybody bringing in anything that is polarizing enough, and this person holding an opinion that is opposite to yours. And as much as you can be a chameleon, I think we all always have, even before we know it, and that's another thing I discovered, always, even before we know it, we already have taken the side. We don't take sides consciously. We are taking sides even before we know we have taken the side, right? So even before you know it, or let's say your two friends are arguing. One says, I don't know, this president is good. The other says this other president is good. They both have read a bunch of articles on the internet and they're arguing and you're just hearing it. As you're hearing their argument, I promise you have already taken the side. You have already taken a side on one or the other. You think that this one is more right than this one is less right. At least that has been my experience a lot. And it seems to me that this very idea of taking the side is the reason that many of the cultural problems that we currently have that exist at large. So I think that what I'm experiencing, what I'm seeing outside, I'm also seeing inside of me, and I can't seem to anything. If I try to fix some person, if I try to come to somebody and say, hey, you should stop taking sides, that is taking a side. I'm taking the side of someone who wants you to stop taking the sides. So the struggle with me is how do you not do it? What is the other option? If you're not a chameleon, if you're not taking the side, and if you're not ignoring, what can you do? If I can't do it in individual relationships with people, how can we do it at large?
Well,
as a society, as a culture.
Don't you think that this subject is related to this other impossible tasks? I'm implying that it might be impossible what you're asking for, such as, how do I not breathe for an hour? How do I swim for 5 miles? How do I get on the airplane when everyone takes off and I stay on the ground while being inside the same airplane? Can you do that? Do you want to do that much, that you want to kind of defy the laws of common sense and gravity? And it seems like there is some concern about taking a side for you. And do you want to stay neutral somehow? Like, what's the goal in your quest for this? Being neutral is taking a side, So, yeah.
Let's be specific. Let's bring a specific example, and I really don't want to bring in politics because I don't like talking about politics.
I support that.
Here's an example. I have a friend who doesn't like Putin, and this friend told me that she believes that he should be, physically destroyed. And I was like, in what way do you think you're different from him then, right? And she didn't quite understand it, and I had to repeat many times and explain in more details that he believes just as strongly in what he's doing. And between you two, the strength of your belief is not really what makes you right. And so similarly, if I disagree with you, isn't very different. That is like that. That's an example. How do you? It's sort of like what I think. What another example I can bring. I read recently a book called Peace Pilgrim. The autobiography or biography of someone named Peace Pilgrim, and she's this woman in the 50s, 60s or something who was a peace activist. And at a certain age, she pretty much became like a saint. She left all her possessions. She was wearing a tunic that said Peace Pilgrim, and she just pretty much hiked across the United States and back like 5-6 times. And she became quite famous. Never heard about her before because, didn't grow up at that time in the US. But her message was, at the time she was protesting the war in, I believe, in Vietnam, whatever war was happening at the time. And her message was that you can't protest the war with more violence because then you're not different from those who want the war to happen. And it's very similar to the messages of like Gandhi or MLK. What's MLK? Yes?
Yes.
Right? So this is kind of similar in this way. If I disagree with you and then I talk to you by arguing my position that is different from your position, is that the right thing to do? Mm-hmm. Is that what I should do? I
think in our podcast we probably won't arrive at the comforting answers, and the point is to discuss these very difficult questions that are difficult in the sense that they don't have a clear-cut answer, but certainly the quest for some sense is interesting. So I'm enjoying the process. So how do you connect this to your concern about taking a side? So basically, you are suffering in a way, if we can use this word, with an impossible choice of needing to take a side, even if you don't feel like doing it, even if you don't think that taking a side is the way out. On the contrary, it's actually committing something that you don't want to do, and it is affiliating with whomever. Like you kind of want to have your own perspective, but even that is most likely taking a side that is similar to someone else's side. Mm.
Yeah, you're feeling it, right? Mm-hmm. It's like a stacking doll. Like you choose not to take the side, which is taking a side, or you choose to not disagree with someone, and then that is another way to take a side. And ultimately, I think I've asked this question. I've told this story multiple times to many people, and the valuable advice that I received was to not agree or disagree, but to ask questions to understand better how this person arrived at to these conclusions that you have an innate desire to not you have a bias to disagree with, meaning that you both had different life stories, and then he or she came to this conclusion that you disagree with, and you know your story but you don't know their story. So maybe talking to them about how they came to it is how you can avoid taking the sides. So kind of like trying to understand somebody.
Yeah, I think it's easier for some people than others in that there are ethnical, sort of LGBT, religious, those gender things that for some people mean so much that there's no negotiation. So I think the environment in which you can even entertain these topics needs to be already accepting and fairly plastic, as in malleable. I think taking a side, or at least pretending to take a side, is also a form of self-preservation, because I'm not sure what you can achieve by just refusing to go with the option of at least taking a side to keep things productive, to keep this societal the societal wheels turning. And I want to ask you, like, why do you ponder these questions, or this particular question about taking sides? Like, why does it bother you, and how urgent it is for you to find the answer to it?
I'd like to point out that at this right moment, you're doing exactly what I'm proposing we all should do. You're not saying, well, I agree, we shouldn't, or I disagree, we should always take a strong line. Instead, you're asking me, how did I come up with this? So you're exemplifying exactly what I think we all should do much more often.
Oh, thank you.
And then I, on the other hand, sort of feeling... well, first of all, I think it's a great question. I don't actually know. I really don't know. I want to know. But there isn't like a specific moment in life when I became more interested in it. It's been coming up. I don't actually know why. Because I think often when I observe conflicts, and I think it's one of the reasons why we have such a great time talking, because just like you, I don't like taking sides. I don't like the boxes. When I see a box, I feel I can see everything that was left out of the box. Like, for example, here's a hot topic. Being inclusive means being non-inclusive to those who do not want to be included.
Yeah.
Right? As soon as you draw a line, you're going to leave something outside of the line.
Yeah, what if the bitter truth is that you need to play by certain rules of the game that you don't like, and that people get out of their suffering by accepting things they used to hate, by accepting notions they used to disagree with, because they somehow got convinced either on their own or using some mentor's help, or rabbi, or some other religious leader who told them, like, yeah, you need to grow up and accept this and convert and don't question it. And then some people's lives became so much simpler and easier. I can imagine this in theory. I don't think I have too many examples of this in my own life, but I think the avoidance or the desire to get out of the suffering cycle can convert you to someone you were not close to at all. And I don't dream of this at all, but I think anyone has this potential, because I've seen these situations. I've seen people convert to a religion that were not religious before, and for me, it's really difficult to have deep conversations with them, because partly I don't want to go that route, and it's scary for me to submit to it, and partly I think it's some kind of delusion that where somebody made the right choice, and they're convinced that's the right choice for their peace of mind and to end a cycle of suffering. But I'm pretty sure the next cycle begins right after.
That's interesting. It's funny how you brought this up. You came back to the idea of suffering, and the reason we take sides is to stop suffering.
I think so.
Is that
Yeah, there's also an ego question, but it's all related to lessening of suffering.
I want to know more about the ego question. Actually, I'm very curious. Not the ego, the suffering part. Kind of want to know more about what you mean.
Yeah, well, let's leave it as a hook for the next episode. And if anyone's listening and you like that type of conversation, drop us a line. There will be an email in the description. And Nikita, I think we should wrap up here for now. And congratulations on the first episode.
Thank you, Vasily. It wouldn't have happened without you babysitting me for so long and asking me to start doing this for over a year.
Okay, we'll see how it goes.
I'm happy that we did.
Glad we did. Cheers.
Bye-bye.